Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our fourth and final presentation for the City of Bowie Workforce Development Program. We are going to wait a moment or two to give everyone a chance to log on, and then we are going to get started with life skills, effective communication, and relationship building. This is a pretty dense session, so it's probably going to go very close to 7. Then we'll have a really quick break, and then we will reconvene at 7 with a presentation on engineering careers focusing on civil engineering with Candace Rory, who works for the City of Charlotte, North Carolina. I want to thank everyone who has participated in this course. It's been a great experience for us, and we hope that you have been learning and growing as we go. You should have all gotten an email from me with the registration link for the next module, which will not be starting next week, but the week after, Thursday, the 18th of May, covering innovation and entrepreneurship. And if you haven't had a chance to register, please register. I will probably register on your behalf if you don't. And you will get a resource email from me after this presentation with all the links and information that we covered today. As always, please type in the chat or raise your hand. We can unmute you if you have a comment. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Danielle.
Thank you, Kay. I'm going to start sharing my screen. All right, so we are going to cover lesson 2, effective communication, and lesson 6, building relationships today. We are giving away gift cards for participation, so I hope that everybody can take advantage of that opportunity and make sure that you type in the chat box. Kay will be keeping track of whoever has the most responses. And in the activities that we're going to do, I do expect that everybody types in something in the chat box related to the activity to make this a helpful resource for everybody. Hope everyone has their workbooks. We're going to use them for the activities. And again, you can use the chat box for questions or answers. Effective communication, your words matter. If everybody can turn to page 8 in the activity guide, we're going to review. As young adults transition out of high school, they find themselves in new environments that involve new roles, relationships, and responsibilities. Students who learn how to communicate effectively in a variety of settings and relationships, be they formal or informal, have the resources to represent themselves in a positive manner to others. This ability helps them better resist the pressure to use substances. In this unit, we're going to determine the similarities and differences between formal and informal communication, identify the types of relationships that occur in personal and work-related settings, identify effective communication skills and how they can help people present themselves positively to others, and learn and apply effective communication skills to speaking and writing. So again, we will be on page 8. To talk about formal and informal communication. Formal communication is the exchange of information between people in a setting where there is likely to be a hierarchy to the relationship, or where the people may not know each other well. Informal communication is the exchange of information between people who are likely familiar with each other and are peers. It is a more casual form of communicating and is still respectful and appropriate to the relationship. Formal communication can be used, for example, in talking to the principal, talking to your boss. Informal communication can be used talking to your friends, other students, your coworkers. Some of them overlap too, so we'll see a few examples of that later on where they may be formal and informal, depending on the circumstance. So in this activity on page 8, it's activity A, we're going to talk about whether relationships are formal or informal or both. So 5 examples we have here are parent, supervisor, partner, teacher, and friend. And if everybody can go ahead and write those in their workbook under the type of relationship, I'll give you a minute to do that. So we're going to go through each of these, and if I can have one participant type in for each type of relationship, that would be great. Hopefully it's not the same person every time. We can take turns. So parent, what does everyone think? And more responses, the better. That be a formal or informal relationship?
So we have Darius says parent would be informal, and Christopher is saying both.
Definitely, I would say both, but I can see where you'd be coming from with just the one. They're your relative, family member, you live with them, they raise you, you're close with them. So definitely that informal aspect. The reason it could overlap is because they are in a position of power. They have authority, at least until you're an adult. So I could see either one or the other. Good, thank you. How about supervisor?
Darius says formal.
Formal, definitely.
Christopher agrees.
Christopher agrees. Okay, good. Yeah, that one does not really have a place for a dual relationship type of communication. How about partner?
The consensus is informal.
Informal, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So partners is your peer, your equal. There's really no kind of hierarchy there. So definitely that would be informal. How about a teacher?
Everyone agrees that would be formal.
Definitely. Yep. Okay, good. And a friend.
Everyone is saying informal.
Informal. Yep. Absolutely. So that's going to be up here. Good. So I think we've got the hang of that one. Effective communication is the respectful exchange of thoughts, feelings, and beliefs between a speaker and a listener in such a way that the listener interprets the message in the same way the speaker intended it. For this to happen, verbal and nonverbal messages need to match. So we're going to hop on over to page 9 in your student guide. How you present yourself and the key to the way others perceive you. Verbal communication and nonverbal communication. Verbal communication involves using your voice with words, and nonverbal includes body language, such as gestures, facial expressions. Nonverbal behaviors include gestures like nodding your head, eye contact, can be direct as you can, no eye rolls. Body language, be mindful of your slouching. Verbal behaviors include active listening, which demonstrates that you understand the message by repeating or rephrasing back what the speaker said. Passive listening is a little bit different. Demonstrates that you're paying attention and understanding the other's message, for example, by nodding your head or using short phrases such as okay or I see during the conversation. There are different degrees of active listening. Effective communication skills require a variety of them. So if you're repeating, that includes perceiving, paying attention, remembering, all of them include those. Repeating is just saying exactly the same words back used by the speaker. So paraphrasing is going to add another step. So you're going to have perceiving, paying attention, remembering, thinking and reasoning, and then rendering the message using similar words or similar phrases arranged how the person used them that was speaking. And reflecting, you're going to again have those same first three, and then the fourth one, thinking and reasoning, and then you're going to render the message using your own words in your own sentence structure. So it adds a level there. So in activity B on page 9, you're going to see different verbal behaviors and different nonverbal behaviors. I'm going to give you a few minutes, probably about 3 or 4 minutes to go through each of them and label, mark it if it's a speaker or a listener task. So the first one under verbal behaviors is using language that is appropriate to the type of relationship and setting. Monitoring the volume of your voice and speaking at an easily understood pace. Using a level and even tone of voice. Using active listening restates or paraphrases what you heard. It sounds like you are saying, let me be sure I understand. Do you mean? Examples. Ask clarifying questions. Should we meet in front of the lobby? Do you need this tomorrow morning or afternoon? At a speaker or a listener. Using passive listening, nodding, responding with short comments like or I see. And we have nonverbal behaviors. Using nonverbal behaviors that match and support your verbal message. Demonstrating interest with eye contact, giving the other person your undivided attention. Engaging the other person with gestures that add emphasis. Using a body posture that is easy and is at ease and oriented towards the other person. Maintaining a distance that is appropriate to the relationship. That means kind of respecting people's bubble spaces. You're not up in their face. You're not too far away that they can't hear you. Pay attention to the tone. And wait for the other person to finish speaking. Does anyone have any questions or comments about that? I hope everyone's gotten that filled out now. Observations about speakers or listeners?
No comments in the chat so far, but maybe you want to advance the slide for the next.
All right, so this is going to correspond with activity C on page 10. Speaking for understanding. This activity is meant to be a group practice for a formal interview. We're not going to go through the whole activity, but I want to explain it so that you can do this on your own, maybe with a family member or a friend to kind of help you hone in on those skills. Finding someone to help you practice your interview skills will help reduce stress during your actual interview and will allow you to focus on connecting with your interviewer rather than struggling to come up with answers. Taking some time to practice will boost your confidence and help you ace your job interviews. Effective communication is a skill that helps us represent ourselves in a confident way to others. It can help us define, understand, and convey our new roles and responsibilities in a transition. Practicing and reflecting on how well we are communicating can help us cultivate effective communication skills. That's why it's really helpful to get feedback from your peers and even role play, especially when it comes to interviewing and communication professionally. So activity D, we're not, oh, sorry. Activity D is about writing effectively. Effective written communication skills use salutation and vocabulary that is appropriate to the relationship. You can start with dear so-and-so. Using grammar and punctuation that fit the type of communication. For example, using full words, not text message shorthand in emails, memos, letters, or reports. Convey a positive tone with your words. Even if you are writing to voice a concern, try to find something positive to begin with. As you discuss the topic, reinforce its positive aspects. Organize your message well so that it can be readily understood by the reader. Present information in a sequential order to make it easy to follow. Review and revise. Reading your message out loud can help you identify and correct errors or unclear thoughts. Verify your written message is appropriate to the relationship. You may want to ask someone to read your message and offer suggestions. So on page 11 in your student guide, we're going to take a look at the two emails. I'm going to read both of them out loud, and I want a little participation afterwards with your thoughts in kind of critiquing those emails. So the first email says, "Dear Miss Smith, I'm writing to request an extension for my assignment due tomorrow. As we discussed last week, my source has been unavailable due to illness. We have rescheduled our appointment for tomorrow, and I expect to get the completed assignment to you the next day. Sincerely, Joe Marsh." Can everybody type something into the chat box regarding how they would critique this email, if it's effective written communication, if there's anything that you would change? Give everybody a minute to do that.
While people are typing, I just wanted to mention, sometimes when you're writing an email like this, you can feel hard to convey a positive tone if you're trying to say something that your reader might not want to hear. And one technique I use is the compliment sandwich, where you start with "that session went great," and then you move to "I have some notes," and then after that, you close out with I'm looking forward to moving forward and improving our work together." So you have some criticism or feedback in there, but you also have compliments on either end that can make it easier for folks to hear whatever the critique is.
Yeah, that's a great technique. Thank you, Kay.
So Darius wrote, I think.
Someone added something here to the chat box.
Oh yeah, sorry, you go ahead. Did you want me to read it? Did you want me to read it, Danielle?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Darius wrote, I think this is straightforward, formal email that gets right to the point.
Excellent. How many other participants do we have, Kay?
We have 2 other folks tonight.
Okay, all right. Give them a second to respond. See anything yet? Oh, did someone just add something?
Chris
Okay.
says, I'm thinking it looks pretty good as well.
Yeah, I agree. Give our last participant just about a few seconds to type in a response here.
Adriel wrote, I think it also looks good.
All right. I agree. Yeah, I think that's a very well written correspondence and should be received with the intention that they sent it. So how about this second email? Everyone can take a look at it. I want you to see how it's written too. But what it says is, remember I told you I didn't think I can work on Tuesday? Well, I was right. Things happened. See you next week. R. It's a little bit of a comparison there. If everyone can, again, type in the chat box some feedback, that would be helpful.
Christopher just commented.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. What does everyone else have to say about it?
Darius says that's an informal message that does little to explain anything. Yikes. And not appropriate, great and satisfying.
Yeah.
Adriel agrees.
Yeah. So, yep, everyone's in agreement. That one was definitely not a professional communication and not very effective either. Didn't really say much. So, good. Well, we're going to move on to next chapter, which is chapter 6. Everybody can follow along in their student guide. So this is about building relationships. As people prepare to transition to the next stage of their lives, they encounter new types of relationships as well as changes to existing ones. Students will benefit from understanding which skills can help them build healthy and productive relationships. They will also benefit from learning how to interact within different types of relationships, as well as how to use the skills of collaborating, negotiating, and compromising, which can help resolve disagreements in a positive way. The goals of this chapter will be to identify the appropriate behaviors associated with different types of relationships, analyze the similarities and differences between formal and informal relationships, examine the elements involved in collaborating, negotiating, and compromising, skills of collaborating, negotiating, and compromising, and explore how collaborating, negotiating, and compromising are related to building and maintaining relationships. So we are on page 34. Different types of relationships require different types of behavior. We have a variety of relationships, both formal and informal. All healthy relationships rely on trust, honesty, safety, accountability, and respect to keep them strong. So we're working on activity A. Yeah, so we're just gonna talk about the different types here. I'm gonna give everybody about 5 minutes to put these on paper, but you'll see in the worksheet, there's two ovals that overlap. We're gonna have formal relationships, informal relationships, and then the overlap would be both. So each of those phrases or words that are around the bubbles, we're going to cross off as we put them into those circles. And each one should have a place, whether it's in both or one or the other. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do that, and we'll come back and reconvene. Have any questions that pop up? Raise your hand or type it in the chat box. Right, and just a minute, we're going to, I'm just gonna kind of blur each one out and what we've come up with. And if anyone has any feedback or questions, you can type that in the chat box. So everyone can kind of check them off. So being accountable, I would say both. Using slang would only be in formal relationships. Playing pranks would probably just be informal relationships. You don't want to play a prank on your boss or your coworker, most likely. Being emotional, I would say mostly informal, possibly both. Punctuality. A lot of people value that with their friends as well outside of formal relationships. So I would say both, but most certainly in informal relationships. I mean, in informal relationships, I'm sorry. No cursing, that would be formal relationships. Making personal phone calls, informal relationships. Asking for help, that's something that you can do in any type of relationships. That would be both. Asking permission, that's definitely something that could happen in both types of relationships. Meeting deadlines, that could also apply to both. It would certainly apply to formal relationships. Being honest, that definitely applies to all relationships. Joking would be an informal relationship. Waiting your turn to speak, that's most likely going to be in formal relationships. Informal relationships, you can kind of overlap each other when you're talking, but that definitely could apply to both, depending on the situation. Texting usually would be informal relationships, sometimes formal relationships, as things evolve are now opting into that. Using salutations like Mr. and Mrs., that would be formal communications and relationships. Being trustworthy, definitely both. Asking questions also could apply to both types of relationships. Being assertive, I would say that's an important and healthy characteristic in both formal and informal relationships. Partying would only apply to informal relationships. Being thoughtful should apply to both relationships. Using correct grammar would certainly have to apply in formal relationships, and could apply to both. Listening carefully should apply to both formal and informal relationships, as does being respectful. Feeling safe is another one, should absolutely apply to formal and informal relationships, but hanging out can just apply to informal relationships. Any questions about that activity? So using the skills of, oh, no questions? Okay. Okay, cool. Using the skills of collaborating, negotiating, and compromising can help you resolve disagreements in a positive manner and help you build healthy and productive relationships throughout your life. So we're going to talk about collaborating first. Collaborating involves people coordinating their skills, efforts, and knowledge in order to reach a common end. Steps for collaborating include agreeing on the end target and determining the tasks required to accomplish it. Identifying each individual's strengths and determining who will do which tasks. Evaluating whether the plan is realistic, revising and reevaluating if necessary. So these are some examples of spoken phrases for collaborating. If you hear, we've agreed on such and such, the team has chosen so-and-so, we can, working together, they all indicate that this is a collaboration. Negotiating, the next one, it involves people in a disagreement working together to come to an agreement so that everyone feels their respective interests are satisfied, also known as a win-win situation. Steps for negotiating would include agreeing that the solution will be fair and realistic for all concerned, identifying a common ground, resolving disputes by bargaining, reaching an agreement, and specifying the details. Verifying that the agreement satisfies each person's interests and is acceptable to all. So these are some phrases that would indicate that negotiating is taking place or is taking place. I hear what you're saying, but I think I understand your point of view and would like to suggest, how about, what do you suggest? Can we agree on that point? I'm willing to do this if you can do that. Compromising. It involves settling a difference so that each person gives up something in order to reach a mutually beneficial agreement. Steps involved include stating the end target, identifying everyone's needs, having each person suggest that he or she is willing to give up to achieve the goal, what he or she is willing to give up, to achieve the goal, and repeating until an agreement is reached. These are some examples of spoken phrases for compromising. If I agree to give this up, what can you offer? What would be an acceptable solution? I can live with. I don't have to have this, but I do need blank. What about you? Any questions on the differences between those so far?
No questions so far.
Okay.
I want to mention, everyone, that it's important to have things that you're willing to negotiate and compromise on. And it's also important to remember what you don't want to negotiate and compromise on. Because if you go into it with willing to concede nothing and give no ground, that's not a negotiation, that's dictatorship. But if you go into it willing to concede everything and change your mind about every aspect, again, you're basically ceding authority to the person you're negotiating with. So it's important to strike a balance between having things that you're willing to change your mind on and having other things that you need to maintain your boundaries and maintain whatever your position is. And it's not easy. This is a very, very difficult thing to do.
Yes, thank you, Kay. So we are on page 37. I'm going to kind of review this, but it's not something that we're going to do in this work session today. So putting theory into practice, it's the activity C on page 37. Want to be mindful of others' feelings. We want to be open to possibilities. We want to make constructive comments and suggestions that begin with I. So this is something that you can do on your own. But as you can see, the example, there's an example for each of the skills: collaborating, negotiating, and compromising. And if you're working with a group to do this, you're going to describe what skill was, how that skill was used. So what phrase was used. So if you were collaborating, it might be, we all such and such. If you were negotiating, could be student A and student B realized that ... Compromising would be an example like student C was willing to such and such. So when you have a group together, you can practice with a friend or a few friends or some family members and finish this activity up. Collaborating, negotiating, and compromising helps build and maintain relationships because it helps you understand other people's points of view. Some important elements to remember are trust, honesty, respect, accountability, and safety. So this is the end of that chapter, that module. Does anybody have any questions about building relationships? I'm going to give you a minute here to respond.
No questions.
All right. Well, I really appreciate everybody attending today and for the duration of the course. We are Bowie Youth and Family Services. Our information is here. We offer family counseling. We offer crisis services. Reach out if you need anything, if you have any questions, we're happy to assist. And again, I have some resources here in case any of them apply. I'm going to turn it back over to Kay for a break before your next presenter. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Danielle. That was great. So thank you everyone who participated in our first session. So we ended a little earlier than I thought, which is great. It gives you guys all a little bit longer of a break before we come back to talk about civil engineering. I'm going to once again remind everyone that we have our second session, which is covering innovation and entrepreneurship, and that will be taking place starting on Thursday, the 18th of May. I sent out an email to you all recently with the registration link for that on Zoom, and I would like you guys all to register. It's a really good course. We cover a lot of important topics for anyone who's interested in starting their own business. So that will be only 2 sessions. It's going to also be at 6 p.m. on Zoom. And I will also be sending out a resource email after this session, which will include all the links and information that we covered today. And the recordings are now online on the website. So if you didn't see that in the email that I sent, you can now access recordings of the previous sessions. And you can also, while you're there, if you care to check out previous years, if there's some STEM presentations that you might be interested in from previous years. We don't cover the same topics every year. So I also want to mention that we are going to be hosting a dinner for you guys, probably the second week of June. So keep an eye out for that email once we've completed the course. So now we're going to go into break, and I will let everyone know 5 minutes when we are ready to get started with civil engineering. Thanks, everybody. We will see you at 7 for civil engineering. Turn the recording back on. Sorry.
That's fine. It always scares me when that happens. I hope everyone's having a great evening. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Do it every time. Okay. Okay. How does that look?
It looks great.
Okay. And volume's okay?
Yep, we can hear you fine.
Okay, super. So yes, once again, I'm Candace Rory. Please feel free to jump in during this presentation. I would like for this to be informal. If you're not comfortable with that, then please enter any questions you have or comments in the chat. And I'm going to ask Kay to help me monitor those. I'll also try to pause after each slide to give you an opportunity to jump in if you like. So today I'm going to start off with a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to very briefly describe the field of engineering in general, and then narrow down to civil engineering and then transportation engineering, which is why you see transportation on the screen, because that's my focus area. But I will be talking about civil engineering broadly for most of the presentation. And then I'll talk about some skills and education and some helpful hints. Let's get started. I am a licensed professional engineer, or PE. We'll see PE after some people's names. And I'll get into later what that exactly means. My role is Strategic Initiatives Manager for the City of Charlotte Planning, Design, and Development Department, which is technically not engineering, but I'll get into that also. I currently live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I love math, always have. I love to travel, and as you see, I love golf. And funny story, my dream job when I was younger was to be a buyer for a luxury department store, which is very different from engineering. But here I am, engineering. So where it all began for me is when I was a little girl. I've always been very good at math and science. I always like to solve problems and fix things. And when I went through school, everyone would always say, oh, you should be an engineer, you should be an engineer. But I really had no exposure to what engineers really did, especially when I was younger. But when I went to high school, I was accepted to the International Baccalaureate program, which provided a lot of the training that I needed to become an engineer. I started that in 9th grade, not realizing that it would help me become an engineer, but it did. I took a career quiz in high school, and I entered a lot of information about the things I wanted to do, the things I liked to do, and the things I was good at. And the top career for me that this quiz selected was engineering. And so I explored that when I went to college. So let's get into what actually what engineering is. So the field of engineering is very, very, very vast. But essentially, engineers are inventors and problem solvers of the world. There are numerous applicable sections of engineering that apply to the world and today, and there are more than 25 specialties recognized in the field of engineering. But in a broad term, like a broad sense, the general 5 main primary branches of engineering are chemical engineering, civil engineering, electrical engineering, industrial, and mechanical engineering. But there are numerous of other engineering subdisciplines and interdisciplinary subjects that are not a part of these 5 main primary branches. But it's such a broad work category. It refers to a lot of jobs that mainly focus on science and math to solve a variety of problems. That's typically the goal when it comes to engineering. But engineers can design machinery, they can build skyscrapers, they can oversee public works, which is basically how I started in the public sector, which I work for the city of Charlotte, and I started as a civil engineer working for the Charlotte Department of Transportation. There's a lot of civil engineers that work for like a city government or state or local government, state or the federal government. But like on a molecular level, engineers can work on delivery drug systems that work inside of cells, or they can work on pollutants in the soils to clean up oil spills, or design spacecrafts for outer space exploration, help with developing clean water and safe food storage, all types of things. And so when you narrow down engineering as like an overall field, like I said, we have those sub disciplines. Civil engineering is one of them. It's one of the main branches of engineering. Civil engineers are educated professionals who conceive, design, build, supervise, operate, construct, maintain the infrastructure that is the foundation of our modern society. And so this, when I say infrastructure, that can mean a lot of things. Roads, bridges, drinking water, energy systems, seaports, airports, infrastructure, clean environment. They are very, very important to how the world operates. We would not be the wonderful country that we are today with all the advances and the pleasantries of modern society if it weren't for civil engineers. They have a very important job and a very important role. Currently, the employment in civil engineers is projected to grow about 7% between 2021 and 2031. About as fast as like your average occupation, but although the growth is average, the demand for engineers is extremely high. And the reason for that is, well, the demand for civil engineers in particular is extremely high. And the reason for that is because there's so many specialties. So if you consider an airport engineer, for example, if I'm a airport or a city that has an airport that runs an airport, and I'm looking for a civil engineer, but someone that has experience in airports, well, that specialty has been narrowed down significantly from all the people that have a civil engineering degree. I have a civil engineering degree, and I have never touched the design for an airport. And so unless they wanted an entry-level civil engineer, I probably wouldn't qualify for that position. And so I say that to say the demand is high. Also, although the overall growth of the field is standard, is about the same as other other occupations, but there is very, very high demand for civil engineers. So types of civil engineers, we have, there are various types of civil engineers, like civil engineers design roads. So there's a roadway engineer or transportation engineer. And so civil engineers design roads, bridges, water treatment and supply, wastewater treatment and disposal, buildings, railroads, airports, waste management systems. And so that's what I meant by the pleasantries of a modern society. We design all of those. It's very important. Okay, so these are the types, or the disciplines is what they call them, of civil engineers. There are water resource engineers, construction engineers, environmental engineers, structural engineers, transportation, and geotechnical engineers. Typically construction, if you do research, sometimes people include construction engineers and sometimes they will not. I have included them because they are extremely important, and there is a specialty skill that you need to be a construction engineer. Although you may design some type of infrastructure like a bridge, that does not mean that you can manage the construction of that bridge, and it takes a very different skill set to do that. In parentheses, you'll see a dollar figure next to each of these, and that is the average salary for each of these disciplines as of 2022, I think. And so I'll go through each of these quickly to kind of explain what each of these types of roles do. Water resources engineers help with the treatment of water supply and flood damage, or just flood management might be a better word. And so they help with everything from processes and plants to that are needed to clean the water, as well as supplying the water once it's clean, and I mean that entire process. Geotechnical engineers, they design foundations by inspecting and studying soil and rock, and like retaining structures and earthwork. So anything that needs to be done in order to prepare or study the earth for building or digging, that's what a geotechnical engineer does. Let's see, structural engineers. Structural engineers are self-explanatory. They design structures, but those structures could be bridges, they could be buildings, they could be space platforms, they could be amusement park rides. I mean, all types of cool things. But they basically study the stresses and the pressures in building to ensure that they, not just building, I'm sorry, in structures to ensure that they're stable. Transportation engineers, they design, and that's my specialty, they design highways, design, build, construct those transportation or transport systems. And that could be highways, bridges. And it's funny because I have a friend of mine who is technically a bridge engineer. And if there's a bridge that is needed for a road that I'm designing, you know, he would always joke at me and say, oh, you know, step aside, you know, I'm the bridge engineer, you're a roadway engineer, don't touch this bridge, you know. So it's funny, but I mean, technically I could do both, but there are specialties. Drainage is like when you have water that flows through pipe underground and you're trying to reroute it into streams through neighborhoods and things of that nature. When you see like the grates on the side of the road that collect the rainwater, that's drainage. It can design utilities and even ITS. ITS is Intelligent Transportation Systems. I think that's right. And basically, that is when you have like street lights, and you have, so I think most people know this, but you may or may not know this. You know, when you pull up to a stoplight, and there's actually like a sensor in the ground that triggers the light and let it know when to change, or if it needs to change sooner, or it can stay red longer. There's a very intricate system of studying timing of streetlights. That, so say you're going through downtown, and you're cruising along at a reasonable rate, 40 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour, and you just notice you're hitting every green light. Well, that is by design. And that's what engineers that work on ITS systems do. And I wanted to point that out, is because a lot of those jobs, you don't necessarily need a bachelor's degree in civil engineering to do. Associate's degree or even high school diploma, you can get jobs that work with civil engineers to design those systems. It's very interesting. So I wanted to mention that. Environmental engineering. So environmental engineers use engineering systems to study soil, and they use biology and chemistry to develop solutions to environmental problems. And so that could be air quality, it could be controlling water, remediation of water. And so in a lot of cases, these types of engineers work together. And so you'll see like water resource engineers and environmental engineers work together in water treatment plants to actually treat the water. So like environmental engineers might look at the actual chemicals needed to cleanse the water. There might be some type of chemical spill, and they'll need to go figure out a way to reduce the impact of that spill before it reaches the water treatment plant, while the water resource engineers actually design the systems and the bays that the water filters through to actually get clean. It's a very, very complicated process. But part of my point in saying that is that a lot of engineers, especially civil engineers, have to work together. So I'm going to move to transportation engineers, which, like I said, is my specialty. I started broadly at engineering in general, and then I narrowed it down to one type of engineer, of major branch of engineering, civil engineering, and then transportation engineering, which we saw on the last slide, is a type of civil engineering. And so the focus is on the movement of people, goods, and materials to safely and efficiently move those people and goods. So we find solutions to meet the increasing travel needs on land, air, and sea. And so like I said, we design things such as roads and railroads and airfields and ports. And all of these careers are very different. I did an intern with Norfolk Southern. Well, it wasn't necessarily an intern, but it was, I did a part-time position with Norfolk Southern, a little short-term position with Norfolk Southern as a rail engineer, and I immediately knew it was not for me, which is something I will talk about later as well. But Transportation engineering was a lot of fun. I did it for quite a while, 10 years, 12 years. And basically, I started out designing drainage systems, and it got very monotonous. So I talked to my manager and I said, you know, I need something different. And so I started designing roads, which I love. In these pictures, you will see 2 roads in Charlotte. And so I did not work on either one of these, even although my firm did. The left is called a diversion diamond, and it basically is an intersection that bridges an interstate. And so there's an intersection, it's the intersection of a road and an intersection on and off ramps. And there were a lot of conflicts, in a nice way to say accidents, on this street prior to this intersection. And the goal of most of the time, if there's a roadway system that you are redesigning for whatever reason, most of the time, the goal is to reduce conflict points. And even though this picture on the left, it looks very complicated. It looks like, oh, this seems like this would increase conflict points, but it does not. And if you notice, if you see my mouse, the traffic travels along on the right side of the road, and then it goes through this intersection and it crosses over to the left side of the road, and then goes through the intersection and crosses back over to the right side of the road. And what that does is it reduces a lot of what we call left-hand crossover movements. So there's a lot of, we like right turns. Right turns, it's just free flow. That's what we like when we're designing, and this reduces that. And so, and I remember when I first saw this design, I was thinking, we're doing what? But this, you know, Charlotte was definitely not the first person to do this design. But I think this intersection was the first in our region. But it works very, very well and has reduced accidents significantly. So that means it's a success in my book. So the this intersection on the right, the name of it escaped me earlier, but it's called a turbine intersection. I thought about it later, and I was just like, oh, that's what it was, turbine. And so it's called
I'm glad to know that. I was wondering.
Yes, it was driving me crazy. It's called a turbine intersection, at least in North Carolina. And there's a series of sweeping movements, which is a more dramatic effect than the one on the left, but to maintain that free flowing right, where there's not a lot of intersection points or conflict points. And this is actually another intersection that that is now very efficient and works very well. There are not even backups at this intersection any longer. And it's cool. I remember when I saw it, I was like, that's cool. But yeah, these are very complicated designs, and transportation engineers are always seeking new solutions to our everyday transportation issues. Okay, so this is a project that I worked on. This roadway is called NC Music Factory Boulevard. And if you look on the left, right here, you have this abandoned off-ramp that was overgrown. This entire area was wooded. This was like a vacant graveled area. Right here is a live rail line. This is a major thoroughfare with a bridge. And then we have this development area. So there is an existing, you can't see it under here, but there's an existing roadway under here that, hold up, let me get my bearings. No, this is the existing roadway right here. Existing roadway that turns and travels into this development here. So what I did was design, and this is my baby. I did this mostly by myself. I did the design, I did the plans, did the construction administration, which basically means I help construction with any issues that came up. And so, yeah, I was very, very proud of this road. It was very complex. So right here, if you notice, there's a new roadway right there. So right after this bridge, I designed a road that came down the hill because there were some topography challenges. And when I say topography, I mean changes in grade or changes in level of the earth. Very hilly, or easy way to say it. It's very hilly. I designed a road that came down here and traveled under this interchange, or I'm sorry, this interstate, and tied into this existing street right here. And there were a lot of, and as you see there was a new building development. They knew I was designing this road. And so what they did was give access to this land now, which had no access before. So as soon as I designed this road, they immediately developed this property and added an apartment complex. And this building right here, you see they added on to this building as well, since I designed it. But let's show you the next picture. The reason why this road was so complicated, you can see how there's the hill here. I had a grade to tie into at the beginning of the thoroughfare next to the bridge. I had to come down the hill, this wooded area. I had to stay away from this rail line because they do not like you when you impede their right of way. Rail lines do not like that. And then I had to curve to meet the existing roadway intersection, as well as split the columns for this interstate up above. And so it was not an easy design. It took 2.5 years, but it looks great. I'm very proud of it. My friends, NC Music Factory Boulevard, it's built to access a entertainment area where they have, outdoor concerts and all cool stuff. And when my friends travel down this road, they all know that I designed. They're like, "Hey, Candace designed this," which is cool. And that's one of the things that I really like about civil engineering, is because, what you do, your product, what you give, you can actually see the fruits of your labor on the ground and drive on it, which is, to me, pretty amazing. And some people, that doesn't really matter to them, but it's a big deal for me, to be able to see what I did. It was a 2.5-year wait, but I saw it. I was very excited, and I'm very proud of it to this day. Let's get into some civil engineering adjacent careers. And these are careers that work with civil engineers, may or may not need a bachelor's degree. Some, you can even have a high school diploma for some of these positions, but they are a very significant part of what we do, and are extremely helpful And so I'll go through a few of these. Civil engineering technology. So that is actually, I put occupation, but that's actually the major. The actual occupation is civil engineering designers. That's what most people that have civil engineering technology, they become civil engineering designers, but there's a host of other things that you could do, like soil technicians, where you go out and test soil. Site supervisors. So like on construction sites, you have people that, you know, kind of look at the plans and make sure the contractors and the subcontractors are building to the appropriate plan. And I mean, that's really important, because something is built incorrectly, it costs a lot of time and money, and it's not taken very well most of the time. But yeah, site supervisors, a lot of site supervisors only have a high school diploma, and make very good money, and are extremely helpful, and have very challenging and engaging work. I said, soil technicians, site supervisors, drafters. So drafters on here. So when you go through civil engineering technology as a program, and that is typically associate's program, you learn computer aid design, or CAD, and that changes very frequently. The software that I use to design it, I don't even think they're using that anymore, which tells you how old I am. But it's a design software. You can create 3D representations and blueprints and engineering drawings. You can help the civil engineers with designs in the office, or go in the field and verify things. It's very multifaceted work, and it's in very high demand. A few of my friends have asked me to do drafting work for them with like other projects. So like maybe they're doing a house renovation project, and they're like, "Oh, can you at least draft my floor plan or draft this sketch?" And I mean, you can use drafting for just about anything. There was a draftsman that I worked with in Arizona. He was amazing. He actually designed this road, and he took my layout and used like 3D data and like Google data, and put the road in 3D with like actual buildings, and you could and use point of view, point of view perspective, and you could actually drive on the road. And I was just like, that's pretty amazing stuff. And I'm almost positive he didn't have a bachelor's degree. But that's just something else that drafters can do with different software capabilities. Let's see, surveying. So surveying and mapping is where technicians collect data and map the earth. So when I mentioned topography earlier, they basically put lines and dots on the map to let me know like where the hills and the pits are, basically. It's what they're doing, and whether it's flat or not. And I can't do anything without my surveyor, like absolutely nothing, because I need that data to actually, if I'm going to design something new, or even if I'm going to retrofit something existing, I need to know what it actually looks like now. And so most surveyors and mapping technicians either have a high school diploma or associate's degree. And this is also a field that, if you don't like being in the office, perfect for you. They are in the field constantly. They are, like I said, surveying the land. They're, taking samples. They're shooting shots, which is which is kind of not a very technical term, but what we call when we need a surveyor to go out and like pick one particular point. So maybe there is a building, the edge of a building, a sidewalk, and then a I don't know, some type of fire hydrant or something that goes down to a really large water main. And we're designing something, we do not want to move that water main, but we have to squeeze between the hydrant and the building. And so maybe they didn't shoot the hydrant or pick up the hydrant in their data when they did it initially. So we'll have them go out and get like the actual point of the building and actual point of the hydrant. And they can tell us where those things are. It's very, very precise work. They take all the property boundaries. So if you want to know, like, you know, the edges of your property, the surveyors can tell you what those are. They do a lot of research about previous land plots and things of that nature. So that's work that is very adjacent, like I said, very adjacent to civil engineering, and work with civil engineering to get a lot of the work that we do done. And these are, like I said, positions that you could easily get a 4 to 6 month certificate and, you know, get a job immediately because they're in such demand. And so I just wanted to provide that information, you know, because, you know, maybe that you don't want to commit to a 4-year degree, you know, just want to kind of test out, you know, civil engineering, see what it's about, see if you like it, you know, see if it's for you. You know, these are very good options for that. Okay. Let's see. What's next? Okay. Useful skills and qualities. So like I say, engineering is when you know, apply math and science. And then you use, you know, principles and theory and experience and judgment and just plain old common sense to help people. Engineering is the process of producing a product or a system or infrastructure to meet a need. And that's typically the goal, trying to help and figure out a way to benefit people in the world. So I have these listed in 2 different categories, technical, and then what I call personal qualities. And you'll hear people say, oh, soft skills, those are soft skills. But I broke them out because I feel like they're somewhat different. I feel like they are very different, but technical skills are the kind of nuts and bolts. You know, if you do engineering, math is gonna kind of have to fit in there somehow. Science, you're gonna have to use science in some way. You need to be highly analytical and detail oriented. And although no one's perfect, and there are processes in place and safety factors that assist with when there are mistakes that are made and things of that nature, you do have to be detail oriented because, you know, a costly mistake could literally be catastrophic. And so, you know, if you're the type of person that, you know, if you're going through work and you're churning through and you're just like, oh, that'll be fine. Engineer's probably not the work for you. You know, there are a lot of professions that, you know, it's much more fluid. It's a better way to describe it. And so, you know, that's just something to know. If you know, to know that about yourself and to know that about this field. And then personal qualities or soft skills. So if you're, you know, imaginative and creative, you have great communication skills, you like to work in teams, and you enjoy building or improving things, this is definitely a field you would probably be interested in. if you like working by yourself and you don't really like to interact with people a lot, this is probably not a field for you. But don't get me wrong, there are days that I go into my office and it's just me and my computer. But 70% of the time, I'm having to ask another engineer or a drafts person or my manager a question. We're gonna have to meet to look over how what I'm designing fits in with something else. So we're gonna have to talk to another consultant because they are working on a different aspect of the project. They're doing the drainage and I'm doing the roadway, and then someone else is doing the utilities. And so, you must collaborate. And so teamwork is very important. And with the personal qualities, these might be things that, you naturally enjoy, that you are naturally good at. Some of these things you can definitely develop. So like good communication skills can be developed if you work on it. So, don't let those things deter you if you feel like this is something you're interested in. But just know that these are aspects of the career, and that, this it will be something you'll have to work on, or something you'll have to be a part of, like teams. And just, so that's just something to note. So education and certifications. Now pause. Are there any questions? We've been kind of rolling today.
No questions so far in the chat, but again, guys, if you have anything you want her to elaborate on or any points you'd like her to go into more detail, feel free to type that in the chat. That's what she.
Yes, absolutely. Please do. So education and certifications, and I should have put licensing on here too. Technically licensing. So you start with, and this is like I said, this is for like the full-fledged, like civil engineer, bachelor's degree, career civil engineer. You start with a degree, bachelor's degree, typically from an ABT accredited engineering program. And you'll learn all about the different theory of engineering. And that is one, I wouldn't say fault, but that is one downside, at least in the past when I was in school, about engineering programs. They are very theory-based. And so when you get in the field, you have to learn how to apply the information that you're taught. Now, I think they really do have a lot of good programs that you can go through while you're in school to make sure you're kind of applying those principles. But for the most part, your work will be theory-based because you do have to learn the practical, technical theory behind how to compute the answers or solutions to these problems. And so you get your degree. And so some people, you could do it either while you're in school or after school. You can take the fundamentals of engineering exam, or they call it the FE exam. I took mine my last semester, my senior year of college. And if you pass that, you become an engineer in training, or EIT. And basically what that means is you're allowed to work as an engineer under the kind of guidance of a licensed engineer for typically it's at least 4 years. These requirements for engineering is kind of standardized nationwide. Maryland is very similar to North Carolina licensing, but they are different organizations. I think it's called Maryland Board of Licensing, Engineering Licensing, I think that's what it's called. And so what you do is you work under a professional licensed engineer, a PE, for at least 4 years, and then you apply. You apply to that organization that I mentioned, the licensing board, And you have to list out all your relevant experience, your relevant work experience. You have to get that PE to kind of sign and verify that work, and you have to get other references. And you have to apply to the board and say, hey, I've been working for 4 years. I kind of know what I'm doing now. And they will either accept or deny your application to sit for the professional engineering exam, where you will get your PE. So if they accept you, you take your PE and your PE exam, and then that's when you become a licensed professional engineer. I think both of those tests are, I want to say they're 4 hours long. Oh no, I'm sorry. I want to say they're 8 hours long. And they are very rigorous tests. But once you get your license, what that means is you can seal or stamp blueprints or drawings. And that lets people know that the drawings were designed to a certain standard and can be constructed legally by whoever the builder may be. 9 times out of 10, that's some type of organization or municipality or federal government or state government. And they require that they are sealed. That means that the professional engineer has reviewed and verified that all the documents and all the blueprints are done professionally and to a certain standard. And that's kind of what it's kind of a big deal to have a license. But say that with a caveat. I work for the city of Charlotte. There are several engineers that do not have their license at the city, and it's probably a 70-30 split, if I had to guess. And those engineers, the reason why they don't have their license is because they focus on project management for the city. And so what they do is they review the plan. So say I'm the consultant and I'm the designer, and I am designing a road for the city, and the city says they want a 4-lane road that does this. And so, for example, the NC Music Factory Boulevard, they said, we want this road to go to NC Music Factory Boulevard to access this entertainment area. And so, I went back to my consulting firm and designed the plans to standard, several iterations, and, a year later, the project manager reviews those drawings, make sure they adhere to their specifications. So, that it is 4-lane, that, it is safe for the public, that that it's on budget, that it's designed in the time frame it's supposed to be designed in. And so they manage the project, but they haven't designed anything, and they don't necessarily have to seal anything. So they don't really need a professional engineer's license. And I mean, they make good money and they work just fine, and we work together just fine. They just can't design projects. They manage projects. And so I think that's the difference. I do think having a professional engineer's license makes you more marketable, but it just depends on what you want to do. Maybe you don't ever want to do anything with design, so it might be a waste of time. You just have to figure out what's the best route for you. Okay, so there are several paths for civil engineers. You can work at the public sector, which is like local, state, or federal government. And then in those roles, what you do is you regulate, you inspect, you develop. So this is what I was saying about the project management. So they work at local government, which is the city of Charlotte, and they inspect, my work and manage my work. And when it's being built, they'll have civil engineer inspectors that go out and make sure it's built the way it's supposed to be built. And then you have people that regulate. So when I worked at the Charlotte Department of Transportation, I reviewed land development projects. So somebody's building an apartment complex, they would submit plans and I would say, hey, you have a 250 unit apartment complex. You are going to create so much traffic for this intersection. I want you to build a turn lane in each direction on this road. And so those are regulations and requirements. And so public sector does the regulation, and then they develop the regulations. So they tell you have to do this. They tell you, you must meet these standards. The federal government, the Army Corps of Engineers, that you can't just dump dirty water, in the streams. You have to mitigate for those projects. And so that's kind of the public sector. The private sector are basically architectural and engineering consulting firms. And so you'll hear that term AE, which is architect engineers. And so they're very closely related. I meant to mention this earlier. A lot of people ask me what's the difference between architects and engineers. So architects design how the building should function and look, and engineers make it stand up. And that's kind of an easy way to think about it. And there's several times I remember I was working with a friend of mine who's a structural engineer, and he was showing me, the architect plans for this building, and it was it had a floor, it's a hotel, and it had a floor with a dance floor, and they wanted this big open area for like a party room, like I forgot what you call that, like the partition room that you have in hotels. And so they wanted this big open area. And he was like, no, you need a column right here or the floor will fall in. And I was like, well, is there any way? No, you need a column right here or the floor will fall in. And so, that's kind of and they work well together, but that's the different functions of their role. Anyway, back to consulting firms. When I did the design, manage, and construction of that roadway, I worked at a consulting firm. And the public sector, the local government at the time, hired us to design the road for them. And so I designed it, I managed it, and we didn't have a construction arm at our firm, but we hired another construction firm to build it, but I did do construction administration. So consulting firms actually construct as well. Or you could take the research education route. You could teach, research, create policy, talk about, environmental policy, how to make the world more sustainable, teach, high school, college, elementary school, or just do research. I remember when I was in my junior year of college, I wanted to be a forensics engineer, which is one of those subsidiary kind of subsets of engineering that's kind of related, but not. But basically, what it was is whenever something failed, say you had a bridge collapse, I would go in as a forensics engineer and determine what happened. And so I would research and, redesign and inspect and figure out, why the bridge collapsed. And so those are types of kind of research fields. I think they do more than that, but that's what I would categorize it. Or you could just do research and figure out a way to reduce potholes. So you could be in a lab, have different types of asphalts with different water contents, and or concrete with different water contents, and figure out a way to reduce potholes. You would be a millionaire. Yes, everybody's trying to do that. Okay. Okay, so I just talked about this really, but so I started as an EI at a consulting firm, EIT, engineering and training, and I worked. I went to another consulting firm where I worked as a design engineer, and then became a senior project manager, where I got my PE again at Fleming. And so those were my private sector jobs. And then I went to the City of Charlotte Department of Transportation, where I did the engineering project manager. That's the one where I reviewed for land development projects. And then I became a transportation planning engineer for a regional organization that is federally funded. So it's a federal organization that plans roadways for the region for the next 20 to 40 years. When I first started there, I didn't really know what they did, but I took the job anyway. But it blew my mind. I was like, I was previous to that, I was planning roads and, expecting plans for things that were happening like right now. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh no, you're not looking at anything that's happening right now. You're looking to plan what could happen in the next 20 to 40 years. And I mean, it was very interesting, engaging role. I loved it. But I moved on. I am now the strategic initiatives manager for Charlotte Planning Department, and I work for the director. He hired me because he knew I had great project management skills and wanted me to help him kind of navigate just departmentally projects and strategic initiatives that he was trying to push forward. And so I do absolutely no engineering right now from a technical sense, but I use all of my engineering skills that I mentioned earlier, the creative and good communication and all those skills, those qualities that I mentioned earlier. I use all those every day, all the time. And so, engineering is a great field that teaches you a lot of transferable skills as well. So in case you want to change. Okay, run out of time. Let's see. So this is a kind of slide of what I wish I knew when I was you. So when I was in your place, these are the things that I wish I would have known. First thing, when I'm trying to select a career, I research. This link takes you to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, Office of Occupational Statistics and Employment. And it just has like all these professions. And I mean, you can search outside of civil engineering, you can search almost any like general broad profession, and it gives you pay and what they do and how they do it and what kind of education you need. Very good research. I say start there. Next, interview people in those positions. LinkedIn is a beautiful thing. And so you literally can type in the position name and find people that do that job. Send them a message and say, hey, can I send you a message? Can you ask me some questions, or have you call you and interview you and ask you about your day? Most of the time, people are very, very, very willing to share that information with you. Shadowing. So basically, call a company that does the work and ask them to shadow someone in that role for a day or two and just see what it's like. I did that for industrial engineering. I did that for forensics engineering. I did that for rail engineering. And I realized that every single one of those jobs I did not want to do. And I'm glad that I did. And then lastly, don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to try. And then, like I said, this is not applying just to civil engineer. This applies to any profession. Don't be afraid to at least try. Get hired as an assistant at that job. See what they do, and if you don't like it, pivot. That's what I did. I mean, I got a civil engineering degree, and I'm, a few years later, I pivot. those skills are transferable and you can do something else. And lastly, resources. So, some of the basic principles of engineering, you can learn, free through some of these links and various other links. Google's an amazing invention. So just Google things, but just knowing the basic skills of math, science, and technology will be very, very beneficial for all types of careers. And then below, I have some national organizations that are tremendous resources for internships, scholarship, mentoring, or even shadowing. They have student chapters that have students that are either in the field, students that are in those trying to get those degrees, or are in those programs and or either want to become a civil, engineer, professional engineer, and they're probably closer to your age, and you can talk to them and interact and see if they have any events you can attend. They are great resources, and these are national organizations, so you can research and find out if there's one local to you. They have some that are local to the region, some local to the state, and so try to find one that's close to you. And they have events and you can network, but they are tremendous resources. Okay, I'm on time. Thank you for your attention. Kay, was there anything that I said or provided, any information I provided that I didn't this time?
I feel like you covered everything in a great deal of depth. We don't have any questions in the chat, but we are going to pause for a minute to see if anyone has any questions. While you guys are thinking of questions, I'm going to do my spiel one more time. I know you're tired of hearing it. You're going to get an email from me. It's going to include all the links that Ms. Rory featured in her presentation today. These links are also going to be posted on the program website, and the recording is going to be made available. And we have one more module for you guys coming up week after next, starting Thursday, the 18th of May. That's the module on innovation and entrepreneurship, which I know a lot of you were very interested in when I spoke with you during our intake interviews. So please register for that. Thank you so much, Candace. That was another really comprehensive presentation. I learned something from these every year, and it's so cool to, I think of the engineers as the folks that build the world. It's so cool to see all the different ways that you guys impact the environment in which we live. So thank you, really. It's really, really interesting career. And thank you again for providing those other alternative paths that are civil engineer adjacent that may not require quite as much schooling or time commitment for folks who want to break into the field right now. So once again, thank you, everyone. I don't see any more questions. We really appreciate everyone who participated in this program. I really hope that you guys learned a lot, got some good ideas, got some good inspiration. And again, these speakers are all resources for you. I will include Ms. Rory's email in my resource email to you guys. So if you want to reach out to her and ask more questions and follow up, she is available. All of our speakers are resources for you. So please take advantage of that if you want to. And with that, I'm going to close out the session. All right.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody. Bye.